Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week beginning April 8th, 2024. This week, we're taking you to Nebraska as our lead story, $37 million in sportsman-generated conservation dollars saved. Stand by for that as we bring our guest on here in a few. We're going to go to the Hill and talk about the Explore Act. Massachusetts looks to support discounted licenses and free licenses through reimbursement. Heading back to the Bluegrass State, Kentucky, where we have a success in protecting hunter and recreational shooter privacy. The Badger State hits and misses. Some good legislation passed, some good legislation not passed. Finally, we head out to Colorado, where here we go, another instance of sin tax being assessed to the sporting community to fund other pet projects in the name of safety. All that and a little bit more, but let's welcome in this week's guest, author of our feature article, again, nearly $37 million in sportsman-generated monies, protected Nebraska, Mr. Jake Gould. Jake, thanks so much for carving out the time. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Fred. Thanks for having me on.
Heck yeah, buddy. So just as it said, how did this all come about? And we're celebrating, obviously, to tell us where these, the total was coming from. And, if this wasn't a success, where would these many millions of dollars have gone to?
Yeah, so this bill was introduced pretty early on in the session. And mind you, Nebraska had a short 60-day session, which is coming to an end here pretty soon. But this bill was overall looking to take surpluses from different governmental departments and transfer it to the state general fund. The sections that CSF really opposed here were sections 30 and 31, which section 30 looked to strip $7 million from the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission State Game Fund and another $2.5 million from the Nebraska Habitat Fund. Now, both these funds are managed by the Nebraska Game and Park Commission. But as I said, these funds would have just been directed to the state general fund and would have been distributed to different agencies that may have been in a deficit. So they went and found the agencies that had, a surplus. We're looking to strip that, put it in the state general fund and distribute it elsewhere so that they wouldn't have to go and raise taxes to meet, their budget. But what's different about, the Game and Parks Fund here is that it isn't generated, the money isn't generated through taxpayer dollars like normal government agencies. This fund was, through the sale of hunting and fishing license and the federal apportionments that is given to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.
What's remarkable, and this isn't specific to Nebraska, this happens often across the country, is, state agencies and governments want to, especially when there's a surplus at the fishing game level or, whatever you call it, DNR at all, they want to go and take that money and distribute it, but they never want to fund it. There's such just juxtaposition. It's almost like they want to ignore the needs of such a valuable state agency, where you rightly pointed out that those monies are generated on sportsmen's participation, their dollars, anglers, hunters, trappers, and then our recreational shooters, when matched up with those PR dollars and other similar programs, the state is the beneficiary of that, and the public at large benefits on the back of the very few. We've talked about that so many times on this program, and it won't be the last. But it's just so striking that, like we're going to get into it in another article here in the state of Massachusetts looking to reimburse free hunting and fishing licenses. Everyone wants to give something away for free, but they don't backfill that. Where does the funding come from? And here's another example and reason why CSF is so powerful. And Jake, great job for you and also, coordinating with in-state partners to rightfully point this stuff out, and CSF having that access to our Sportsman's Caucus there in Nebraska and working through them to advocate, to educate, and make sure items like this, bad legislation or just legislation that needs some education for sure, is stopped in its tracks, and that the entire population of Nebraska doesn't suffer because of people wanting to pilfer that fund.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an ongoing issue across the country where you see these looking for discounted license or looking to take money from these agencies that do so much for the do so much conservation work that really benefits all the residents of the state and non-residents who come to visit just to enjoy wildlife and all this great stuff that these states have to offer.
Yeah, exactly. And I being one of them, so my own personal uh, testimony to that, going out and hunting wonderful Nebraska turkeys a couple years ago. I actually think the entire country during the pandemic descended on Nebraska for their wonderful turkey population and kind of ushered in a lottery system. But nevertheless, I mean, it speaks to the great resource that's there and outdoor recreation that is to be enjoyed by all and to include non-residents. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, overall, too, this bill being passed with sections 30 and 31 being amended, I mean, they're saving, you know, nearly $37 million in conservation funding. I mean, 27.4 million was appointed to them in 2023 alone through the Pittman Robertson and Dingell Johnson Act. I mean, that's a lot of money we're talking about.
Yeah.
So having that 37 million staying, you know, with Game and Parks, they're going to really benefit from that. And so are hunters, anglers, and recreational users who, just enjoy going to these parks.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So, Jake, I noticed here that Governor Pillen, obviously, thank you to him and signing this into law, but it kind of stands out. I don't see him on our Governor's Sportsman's Caucus roster. Where's the governor stand on that? Have we made that ask?
So we are currently working on that. He is not a member of our Governor Sportsman Caucus yet. He is a first term governor. So there's a lot, thrown at him, a lot on his plate. And we understand that. But, we're definitely working on getting him to be a member of that. And he was great in his, I mean, there was multiple organizations that went to him saying, like, showing what will happen if this money is transferred, and immediately took it out of the bill, wanted it out of the bill. Now, there were some legislators who wanted to see it stay in, but he did not. And, that's why we were thanking him for realizing how detrimental this would have been. But no, we're definitely working on getting him to be a member, and we're going to continue to work those relationships and bring him on.
Well, that's fantastic. And again, thank you to Governor Pillen for listening to those who understand the systems and how this all works and being willing to take that on and do the right thing. And if the governor keeps signing good bills like this for sportsmen and women, he would definitely be a great asset to our Governor's Sportsman's Caucus, and certainly looked forward to hopefully adding him to the roster and continuing to enjoy his support there in Nebraska. Jake, before we let you go, just want to give you an opportunity. Anything you tell the people the state you cover, and if there's any other things you want to talk about before we let you go, any high points, any events coming up that legislators in your states that you cover should be aware of.
Currently, no events on the table as sessions in my region of South Dakota, North Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa all coming to an end here, within the next couple of weeks. So things are really winding down. And also election year. So, hopefully towards the later end of the year when elections happen, we can get some events scheduled and get those new legislators to participate and hopefully have them as members of our legislative sportsmen's caucuses.
Oh, that's outstanding. Well, look, great work here. Congratulations on bringing a victory and a win in coordination, like I said, with in-state partners and your governor there in Nebraska. Thanks so much, and continue to do good work, Jake. You're doing outstanding stuff, and we're so glad to have you as part of our CSF team.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate it.
You bet, buddy. Be safe out there. Turkey season coming. Hope you had some fun out there.
And hopefully you do too.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much to Jake for coming on once again. And again, congratulations for a good win there in Nebraska and for for the entire population of Nebraska, honestly. But very good win for sportsmen and women there. Okay, well, continuing to move on with the rest of the show. Heading to the Hill here. Taylor Schmitz once again brings us Hill news. The House is set to vote on a comprehensive outdoor recreation package, the Explore Act. This week, the U.S. House of Representatives is set to vote on a comprehensive outdoor recreation package known as the Expanding Public Lands Outdoor Recreation Experience Explore Act, H.R. 6492. It is led by Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair and House Natural Resource Committee Chairman Bruce Westerman, and is strongly supported by CSF and includes a few key provisions that are highlighted policy priorities of CSF. The Explore Act is a robust package that includes several important recreational provisions. However, for us at CSF, of greatest interest is language that would improve recreational shooting opportunities. Specifically, the range access language in the Explore Act would require U.S. Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management to have a minimum of one free and public target shooting range in each of the respective districts. The legislation includes language that would help improve future federal land agency planning decisions and would enhance user planning efforts for the public. Specifically, the improved recreation visitation data section directs certain federal and management agencies to capture various recreational visitation data. This section also establishes real-time data pilot program to make available to the public real-time or predictive visitation data for federal lands, helping sportsmen and women with their trip planning efforts. Good there. Of note here, the legislation will be considered under suspension of the rules, a sign of widespread bipartisan support of the legislation. So, as we've talked about before, things don't often go well down there and things get held up. So here's something that looks to make its way through the process. So let's cross fingers and hope that this continues to move through the legislative process and can be another piece of legislation that we champion at the end of the session. More from Chairman Westerman on this particular program forthcoming. More details on that tomorrow, and we'll be bringing you some conversation there.
Breaking news.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a bit of breaking news just as we reported on the Explore Act. Big news happened just after that reporting, so we're going to take you down to Washington, D.C. to our headquarters office. Our Director of Government Affairs, Director Taylor Schmitz, joins us now for the latest and greatest. Taylor, can you brief our audience on what took place last evening as this podcast drops?
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Last night, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a pretty large and comprehensive package known as the Expanding Public Lands Outdoor Recreation Experiences, or the Explore Act for short. This bill is led by Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair and chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, Representative Bruce Westerman from Arkansas. It includes nearly 50 co-sponsors, and including nearly a dozen plus original co-sponsors. And really what this bill seeks to do is it just seeks to modernize and improve the ways that we as sportsmen and women and other users of public lands and waters access these treasured resources that are our public lands and waters. So one of the things that we're really excited about at CSF is language that we helped write a handful of years ago now, known as the range access provision. And essentially what this provision seeks to do is it requires the Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service to have a minimum of one designated and developed shooting range in each of their districts. This is important because at a time when we know that roughly 70-80% of Pittman-Robertson Act funds are generated through recreational shooters, we need to continue to invest in opportunities for recreational shooting. We need to provide safe, accessible places for sportsmen and women to get out and enjoy this time-honored tradition. Obviously, here in the East, it's not a huge issue in terms of accessing public lands or our federal public lands, but out West, those are where people go to rec. So that is an extremely important provision. Another provision that we're excited about is the Film Act.
This is an effort that streamlines the permitting process for small recreational film crews. Under current law, small film crews, you and I going out and filming a turkey hunt on Forest Service lands are treated the same way as a large Hollywood scale production. We recognize that that's a burden for a lot of these smaller entities or just, your lay sportsmen and women that are trying to get out and film their hunt and put it on YouTube to share their experiences with the public. So this provision streamlines that process for parties smaller than six. We're pretty excited about that. And then another provision that we're really excited about that will bring recreation into the 21st century is language that will improve recreation visitation. And specifically, this requires the Federal Land Management Agency to capture various recreation data and establishes a real-time data pilot program to make this information available to the public in real time. So if you're going to, let's just say you're going to the national park, you're just taking your family out, you'll be able to get an idea of how many people are at that park right now, or how many people are waiting in line to get through the gate. So just being able to leverage that technology is really important. And as you know, Fred, one of the things that's often difficult to define with access is, frankly, what is that, right?
Right.
And there's opportunities for us to modernize and simplify access. And this is one of the ways that we think we can do it. So the bill passed last night under voice vote, which is a sign of the widespread bipartisan support, just a procedural method that says that this is the easy one, doesn't require much debate by Congress because everybody is. Where the bill goes now, it heads to the Senate for further consideration. There's a companion or similar bill on the Senate side known as America's Outdoor Recreation Act, which is led by Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair Joe Manchin and CSC member Senator John Barrasso. These bills are similar, not identical, but we're hoping that we can get these important provisions across the finish line in 2004. I think one thing I do want to highlight is that this bill did pass on voice vote, and at a time when we're seeing all this political rhetoric in DC, sportsmen and women, outdoor recreation, and access to our public lands of water continues to be an area of bipartisan support. Continues to be an area that transcends party lines and receives overwhelming support. So we're really excited about this bill. We thank Chairman Westerman for his continued leadership, and we look forward to working with our Senate champions to get this bill across.
Taylor Schmitz, everybody, thank you so much for coming on and updating the Sportsman's Voice audience. Great news. Great to be able to bring that breaking news to our audience, and we'll look forward to continuous updates and hopefully that continues along the finish line, and we can enjoy some sportsman's victory at the end of this session. Taylor, thanks so much for your time. And while we have your attention, folks, with this breaking news down in Washington, wanted to bring your attention back to California. As we reported on last week, Senate Bill 1160 that would have required California residents to register every one of their firearms annually and then pay a fee per firearm. Folks, I can report to you that just yesterday, and that is yesterday, April 9th, as this podcast has dropped on April 10th, that Senate Bill 1160 has been amended and gutted to where that provision is gone. And obviously, it still probably remains an item of concern, given there's still language in there about open carry of handguns. But reporting to you all now, again in real time, the provision for individual registration, gun registration, and fee setting per firearm has been taken out of SB 1160. So not a bad day when you can shine a good light on the state of California and some common sense really today. So there's your breaking news from the Hill, from the West Coast. Let's get back to the show. Heading to the Bay State, Massachusetts Senate bill seeks to support discounted or free licenses through reimbursement. Massachusetts Senate Bill 499, an act to reimburse the George L. Darry Inland Fisheries and Game Fund, seeks to reimburse the Inland Fisheries and Game Fund to prevent the loss of critical conservation funding. We've talked about this particular subject before. This is a priority issue for CSF. So naturally, we are very happy to see this moving through. Of note here in Massachusetts, this kind of legislation has been presented in the past, has made it through to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. and has often stalled there. So we're working hard with co-chairs and with the committee to see that this continues through the process and eventually makes its way to Governor Healy's desk, and hopefully she will sign that. And you heard it with Jake. We were referencing it and many times before. The funding mechanism, how this works, free licenses, discounted license, great, sounds good, everyone's happy. But on the backside of that, there's funding that is removed from the state agency. Again, those monies are matched with federal monies through PR, Dingle Johnson. So, it's as an organization, it's hard to say we don't support such initiative, not because we don't want people to have free licenses, but strictly because of that funding mechanism. So we have an opportunity here in Massachusetts to right that ship, and everybody seemingly would win should we get this again to Beacon Hill, to the governor's desk and sign. Back down to Kentucky, we've had some good wins in Kentucky. Our friend Connor Barker brings us this here, House Bill 357, Second Amendment Privacy Act. I wonder if that was on purpose. Prohibits payment card networks from requiring or incentivizing the use of merchant category code that distinguishes a firearm retailer from other retailers. Here we go. Again, not a new topic. This is a tactic being deployed throughout the entire country. I don't want to belabor the issue, but it's important to highlight it here in Kentucky that it's going on. Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation submitted written testimony to the Senate Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protections Committee, encouraging the members to support the bill. Subsequently, it passed both chambers by large margins and became law without Governor Beshear's signature. So there you go. If you haven't heard of these merchant category code pieces of legislation in your state, it's definitely worth a little look to see if they exist, one, or if they're coming down the line. Every state, it feels like, has either dealt with this in some capacity in the last couple of years or they're teeing it up. And even in your sportsman-friendly states, the Airfinger quote, red states, they're not immune from this, and there will be in-state legislators that do bring this to bear. So it is important when it does come up that our community and more rally to this. This would affect as well your general public, your hikers, your backcountry campers. If you go into a store where firearms are available for purchase, these codes would be tracking your purchases as well, even if you don't buy a firearm. So highly important to recognize and to see that this kind of legislation is defeated where you live, because it's just unnecessary for any government agency to track anything that you're doing, especially when lawful. All that said, moving on. Wisconsin governor signs some sporting bills and vetoes others. The ever smart Bob Matthews out there brings us this. In March, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evans took action on dozens of bills that the state legislature had presented to him following a lengthy legislative process. So let's go to the signed bills here. We'll get you the hits. Senate Bill 586 that allows for air guns to be used during big game hunting seasons. While CSF recognizes their value and supports expanded use, air guns and air bows are the only methods that do not contribute to the American system of conservation funding through manufacturer-paid excise taxes levied through the Federal Aid and Wildlife Management Pittman-Robinson Act of 1937. CSF advocated for a one-time standard required to hunt with an air gun in Wisconsin. However, this language was not included in the final version of the bill. During the future budget negotiations, CSF will continue to encourage the adoption of such stamp going forward. So kind of a double-edged sword here. Good on them for expanding access, but certainly, again, I hate to sound like Scrooge McDuck, like this is all about money, but this does boil down to dollars and cents. If we are not funding our state agencies and not providing those resources, I kind of put this right up there with free licenses. It's great on paper and sounds good, and then you're providing access, but If that's removing very needed funds on the ground, then you're in a deficit, and what's the backfill on that? Certainly, it's not unreasonable to ask people using these iterations of firearms or air guns to pay a one-time stamp. That's pretty reasonable. I mean, you pay most states, you got to buy a muzzleloader stamp to hunt during the muzzleloader season. Archery tags, obviously, to hunt during the archery only season. So, this isn't new. And if you really want to go about that and have that, I think it's more than reasonable. It's only one time. I mean, the ones I just mentioned are annual. You're re-upping your muzzleloader, your archery, any of these special seasons every year if you participate, and no one blinks an eye. So, whatever that looks like for a one time to make sure we capture those dollars in the states that get matched federally, that should be something everyone gets down with. So hopefully we have more success on that. More to come, likely from Wisconsin there. Senate Bill 139 would require Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources to establish statewide population goals for wolf management plan. Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus co-chair, Senator Rob Stafford, the bill preserved the DNR's authority to follow scientific data in determining management practices, but requires that the DNR work toward achieving specific numeric outcome. CSF supported the bill and advised the DNR to adopt numeric population goal when its draft wolf management plan was released in 2023. That was vetoed. Going back to sign, I kind of skipped over it. Another good bill here that we're talking about muzzleloaders. Senate Bill 587 redefines muzzleloader within the state to include modern iterations of the classic firearm, allowing Wisconsin hunters to use firearms, muzzleloaders such as the federal fire stick. It has expanded the hunting accessibility and safety while honing the state's long-standing outdoor traditions. Obviously, CSF supported this legislation from its introduction and helped get it through both chambers, and was present at the governor signing it into law. So great deal there. I mean, you just got to update these laws. That fire stick in particular, pretty neat innovation. A handful of years ago when it came to market, and obviously the agencies had to adjust and update their language on that. So hopefully, with this particular technology, and then specifically mentioned here is the federal fire stick, we can get all the states to come online with that, where muzzleloader is a thing, and people can enjoy that access there. Back to the misses and the vetoed bills here. There was also an attempt to pass good legislation stopping those merchant codes. Unfortunately, Senate 466, that was introduced by the same Senator Stafford, that was supported by us, that wanted to prohibit institutions from tracking sales of firearms with the merchant category code. That was shot down. Definitely would like to see that get passed in the future, and hopefully it's reintroduced. I hate bringing you more misses than the hits, but one more for you. Assembly Bill 1030 would prohibit hunters from taking antlerless deer in a large portion of the northern Wisconsin, impacting 20 counties. CSF opposed the legislation, recognizing that although concerns over the shrinking deer herd size in Wisconsin are valid, the decision-making authority on how to address the problem is best left to the DNR, which is equipped with professional staff that possesses experience, expertise, and the data necessary to make informed decisions surrounding the deer harvest. Here we go again. I feel like I keep saying that every week. Again, these are not unique problems to specific areas of the country, and this is just another example of that. Can't legislate wildlife management. It shouldn't happen. It should be left with the state agency. And again, another drum we've beaten here on this show. These people are professionals. They're vetted. They go through a hiring process. Their credentials, their resume are vetted against oftentimes hundreds and hundreds of candidates. There's only so many of these jobs. Often young professionals coming out with a graduate degree, or sometimes, a full 8. have to leave their home to find those opportunities, often in the West or some of the bigger states like Missouri and Michigan that have bigger opportunities in their fishing game or DNRs. So that should say something. It should speak volumes to the legislators that often bring this stuff up. Leave it with them. They know what they're doing and can best advise, and that should stay that way. Colorado is trying to assess 11% sin tax. Our buddy Barry out there in the West. This is a bill to place a California-style firearms excise tax or a sin tax on firearms and ammunition. Is on the ballot this November. It was introduced in the Colorado legislature earlier this year. As originally introduced, House Bill 24-1349 would levy an additional 11% tax on firearms, ammunition, and so-called firearm precursor part purchases. However, an amendment was made to reduce the tax to 9%. Whoop-de-doo, it should be 0. Thanks for the 2%. CSF was present at the Colorado House Finance Committee and testified against the bill during its first read and will remain engaged until the bill's final disposition. After several hours of debate, the bill was ultimately passed out of committee 6-5 and now heads to the House Appropriations Committee. If the bill is passed by both chambers, the excise tax will go on the ballot in November for the people of Colorado to vote on. Here's another one in Colorado. And tomorrow, guys, you're going to hear, as this podcast drops, again, this is for the week of 4/8/2024, we're going to bring you Dan Gates, who's going to talk about another ballot referendum as it pertains to the cats of Colorado. So, man, Colorado is just stepping in it all over the place. And we need your help as a community out there. Hopefully you, come November, can rally your fellow sportsmen and women, and then rally more people who can vote this thing down. And finally, we have some good news from Isabella Mucci. We have a couple announcements to make for the Collegiate Sportsmen and Women's Coalition. We're going to Louisiana and South Carolina. CSF is now expanding the Collegiate Sportsmen and Women's Coalition to additional colleges and universities around the country. On March 29th, the coalition at Clemson was approved and formalized by the university, is now able to officially register as a student organization on campus. And a few states away, and just a day prior, LSU held their first meeting on March 28th and had over 20 students in attendance. The students got to hear from CSF's PJ Carlton and Isabella Mucci, as well as our friends at Ducks Unlimited, about the importance of policy engagement for members of the outdoor sporting community. Cheer, cheer, cheer. That's great. 2 more collegiate programs on board in Clemson and LSU. That is great news. Go back, check out the Sportsman's Voice podcast that we did with Isabella and a couple of her student leaders. Talk more about that program. And if you're interested or have a college age person in your life that may bring some value or exhibits those leadership talents and skills and thinks they could stand something up at their college, you're definitely going to want to listen to that program and get in touch with Isabella. She can help move that process along, or at least begin it. So with that ends this week's update around the country. Be involved. Every week we're going to say it, and it's got to be a drum that's beaten and a message that's carried throughout. We're a small group of people here, and an even smaller group of people go to the ballot box, even during a big election cycle, as a presidential election cycle is, and then so many more just don't show up in the off-year elections, local elections. I don't even think people know half the time when they're being held, special elections, where a lot of this stuff gets worked out. And as we all well know, the other side is wildly committed to their mission, their convictions, and they turn out the vote. They are good at organizing and getting people to spend some time voting. And gosh, if you give a rip about any of this, if you like getting your hunting license annually, if you like going to fishing, if you like having access to boat ramps and floating your bass boat down a river and catching smallies, if you like shooting pheasant in November and October, I don't know how much more we can say it, but we'll continue to say it until the point settles in and we start getting good turnout and good engagement. It's ultimately in our lap, and we gotta work it out and get more people involved to take care of some of this madness. And that even includes during session, making those phone calls, making those emails, rattling some cages. We don't like what we're seeing in our state capitals or in these committees. You gotta stop it. I'm a voting member, voting constituent of your area, of your district, and I will vote to fire you if you keep bringing legislation and policy that goes against, specifically here, our hunting heritage and our traditions. We need that representation, and we need, at the very minimum, the bad bills to stop being presented. And goodness gracious, if we can be more proactive and get more good policy passed that protects that heritage, that's obviously the bigger goal. All that said, tune in tomorrow, guys. Like I said, we got Dan Gates coming on to talk Colorado, more about that referendum there on the big cats, and a little bit more. As always, thanks for tuning in every single week. Pass this around to your friends. Put the link in your social feeds if you would. This is a very simple show, no more pretty much than 30 minutes on average. So if you're wanting to find out or have interested parties of what's happening around the country, I think we do a pretty good job of bringing that to you, as well as the subject matter experts. All right, we'll see y'all again next Wednesday. Again, big feature program drop tomorrow. Do tune in, subscribe, and follow. Do not miss your notifications. Do not miss an episode, and have that pop up right there on your home screen. One touch service brings you right to the player. Hit that play and go. Everyone have a good rest of your week. We'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.